Hi, my name's Anna McBride and this is the Thriving Families YouTube. Now, Thriving Families, if you don't know who we are a charity based in the Highlands of Scotland, and we provide support, information and advice for parents and carers of young people with additional support needs. Now that is for children and young people from birth to the age of 25, and we are currently a team of 6 and we have varying roles. So my role is two kind of diverse ways, and one is as a family support worker to kind of communicate with parents and carers and try to support them in what their situation is and how I can help them look at that situation and see if I can give them tips and advice and support and direct them to different services and provide information. And the other thing that I have to do, which is why I'm doing this video, is as our volunteer coordinator who is kind of leading our peer support project. So the peer support project is kind of what it says. It's about peers who in this case are parents and carers of young people with additional support needs, and trying to connect people and trying to help kind of reduce the anxiety and the feelings of isolation that many parents and carers of young people with additional support needs are experiencing. So I'm coming at this from the perspective both as a parent and a professional, in that, you know, we really do need to support parents and carers of young people with additional support needs. And it is really challenging to find time to maybe go to an online support group or even a face-to-face meeting, and sometimes you just feel like nobody else gets it. So my aim is to try and help both raise awareness of parents and carers' needs as individuals in the challenging situation that they are. A lot of the time it feels like you're spending a lot of time fighting for your family's needs, and also to help be there to support and to help educate and to give ideas and informal support as well. So I thought maybe it might be a good idea to share a bit of information about me. We do have a podcast series going, and within some of those ideas, again, I've shared a bit about myself, my experience, but not everyone likes to listen to podcasts. So we thought we'd see if YouTube videos might be a way that some people might enjoy accessing too. Because we all learn differently. We're just like children, we all learn differently. So as I said, my name's Anna and I work for Thriving Families. I am professionally, I've come from a background in education. So I was a secondary school teacher for 16 years. I originally trained as a history teacher, and then I went back to university and carried on studying part-time and retrained in additional support needs, and I did my master's in inclusive practice. So really it was that perspective which has brought me to where I am today, in that I really enjoyed working with young people, and I really enjoyed engaging with young people, and especially young people with additional support needs. I found the ability to kind of really look at a holistic picture of a young person and really see how you could work with them really appealing. And so I really enjoyed the challenge of getting to know a lot of young people and understanding their needs and being able to adapt my teaching skills to suit their needs. So I've worked with young people, I suppose, from having mainstream classroom needs to maybe having more complex needs. So a huge variety of experience in that perspective. And even I think just in that kind of concept is that every child in a mainstream classroom, in my opinion, at some point has had some additional support needs. So from my perspective, what I would like to try and do is to widen people's understanding of what additional support needs are. Now, we have, I suppose, transformed as a society in our understanding of that, and I thought it might be nice to have that conversation by going on a walk. So I have done YouTube videos before, but as craft videos with my children, not trying to talk about issues, and so I spent a long time thinking how to do this. So I just thought sometimes you get your best ideas when you're out walking, so I thought it would be nice to take you for a walk with me. Now, I do live in the Highlands. I'm really lucky, so hopefully you'll get to see a little bit of the countryside as well. Okay, so what is an additional support need, and why do I personally believe we need to widen our perspective on it? Now there is a legal definition, we live in Scotland, okay, and there is a legal definition in that an additional support need, I do have notes, but I'm just going to talk to you guys, okay? So please, I know I might make mistakes and maybe I won't get the definition exactly right, but an additional support need, the legal definition within Scotland, is when there is a need identified maybe due to the educational setting or the environmental context, and can be whether it's in the short term or the long term. And that can be a whole list of things, and a child doesn't need to have a diagnosis of a condition in order to be seen as having an additional support need. So it can be anything from bereavement, and that could be the loss of a parent, a grandparent, a pet, that essentially that child becomes a little bit more vulnerable and needs some additional support put in at that time. Or it could be a physical disability, it could be social, emotional or behavioural. And that's where I think we need to widen our perspective, because I think traditionally we saw additional support needs as being something quite physical and very much dominated by having a kind of medical diagnosis, having a kind of a label. And I want us to understand that actually I personally think that in most children's lives, at some point they'll probably need some additional support. So I think the last 18 months have kind of made people realise that a little bit more. You know, the whole world has been through the coronavirus pandemic and we're still going through it. And what I hear parents and carers talking to us is about children's levels of anxiety and children's levels of awareness of what's going on and how do you cope with that. And so, as you can see, anxiety therefore is something which may ensure that a child needs some additional support needs. So I think what it's about is about looking at the whole picture for that child and being able to implement some support that is going to help them cope, okay? Because that's essentially what we're trying to do. We're trying to give our young people the best experience and the best support possible. And it's not just about their education. And, you know, traditionally, if you do listen to our podcast, I kind of, as the history teacher in me maybe does, I kind of go down and give you a bit of a perspective. I'm just going to walk down a wee hill, 2 seconds. I maybe give you some perspective about the kind of historical context which we're coming from. So I don't want to slip on the seaweed. So, you know, education was established in Scotland in 1872. So I'll give you a little bit of brief background. And it's developed from there. We're raining now, it really is Scotland. So we've come up from having still, I would say, in 1944, the Education Act there, we had, you know, still starting to look at this more holistic approach of education and looking at a child and their overall needs and recognising that they have additional support needs, though that wasn't the term used at the time, within school, but also within other areas of life. So what we had was, you know, we used to have an education system which was quite segregated, and where we've moved up to, I suppose if I think about the 2004 Support for Learning Act, is a education system which is about inclusion and is about meeting your child's needs and recognising that they have a right to education irrelevant of their needs. And as I said, did I say it before? We're a needs-based society in Scotland, so a child doesn't need a diagnosis. So if a child is seen as needing some extra support, they have that right to it. And Scotland does have the UNCRC agreement in law now. So I think we really do have to understand that it is the law, it is a child's legal right to have access to education, to have the right to play, to have the right to be supported in everything they want to do in all of their needs. And it is social, emotional, behavioural, medical, you know, physical, all their needs need met. And we have to really think about a child. So that was the kind of line that I always went down as a teacher. I always felt it was so important to get to know a child individually. What were the things they liked doing? What would be the things that would make them laugh? And therefore, if I knew a little bit about them, I would be able to kind of direct my teaching a lot more. And so I think most of us know what it's like if you feel like somebody doesn't know you, then it's difficult to kind of work with them. And I think we have to recognise that children are just like that as well. And we stay like that as adults, you know I'm still like that. And I think we have to understand the personal impact a lot of this has. Oh, it's a bit slippy now, I hope you can see, but the weather's getting quite miserable. So that's my kind of professional background in working with young people in that way. But I suppose it's nice to give you a personal discussion as well of where my perspective comes from. So, as I've said, from an education background, but as a person, I have an additional support need in that I'm dyslexic. But when I was at school, it wasn't really picked up on. It wasn't really a big thing in that, I don't really remember there being additional support in school. Possibly there was, but it just wasn't dominant for me. I remember being told, I suppose, a lot, oh, you make silly mistakes and, your spelling's rubbish, just put in a bit more effort. And I tried, and I did pretty well at school, but it was never the best at anything. And I was always just told, oh, silly little mistakes that take you down a grade. But I got through and got my grades, and it was only when I was, I think it was second year of university, end of first year, going into second year of university, and I remember handing an essay in and the tutor telling me that it was just poor, like it just wasn't good enough, it just wasn't university level, and that if I was expecting myself to be able to go into honours and to be able to graduate, then I'd have to get better because it just wasn't good enough. And to me it felt like I was being told that I was stupid and that I was lazy. And I remember coming out of this kind of feedback meeting and being really upset because I was kind of thinking, I'm really trying. Like, I wasn't trying to be lazy. I had checked my spelling, I had checked my grammar, but there were just things that I wasn't seeing. So from that meeting, I did go to what now I realise was probably a learning support department. So this is the reality of going for a walk with me in Scotland. I'm now sheltering under a tree because the rain's got so heavy. So I was talking about my dyslexia diagnosis and how for me it was great because it validated this fact that I knew I wasn't lazy and I knew I wasn't stupid, and I just needed to find strategies to get through that. So being the kind of independent person I am, what I used to do was get friends to read my work for me and check for me. Ooh, the rain got a bit heavier there, started to hailstone. This is definitely Scotland and the Highlands. So it's hard for me to keep up where I was at, but so I was talking about me using support around me to help me with my dyslexia when I was at university. So I would get friends to check and to check my spelling, and I would word process, and it made things a lot easier for me, and that worked. And as I have got older, those coping strategies have become a lot easier because I'm a lot more aware of it, and I feel like I've been more successful in my personal education as an adult because of that, because of my awareness and because of my own ability to be able to find strategies. However, I do think that when I look back with hindsight, maybe if I had been more open and had better understanding, knowing that there were people who could support me, professionals who could have supported me more easily, it may have not have taken for me to go and do a postgrad to realise that actually I was capable. And so yeah, I've done my teaching postgraduate, and then I did my master's. So obviously I was able, and I wasn't lazy, and I was trying, and it was nothing, the dyslexia isn't anything that defines me, to be honest. It just, I suppose, contributed to me working harder and being more determined. I also have a husband and 2 lovely children, and my husband also has dyslexia. And so we have a shared understanding and support each other both in that way. And we have 2 adopted children. And because of their circumstances, both of them have additional support needs. But they're not necessarily additional support needs that people would look at them and see. Most my children's additional support needs comes from their circumstances prior to coming to live with us. So if people have an awareness of attachment or developmental trauma, then they can acknowledge and understand that they do have additional support needs. But stereotypically and historically, I don't think we necessarily would have acknowledged my children as having additional support needs. And I suppose that contributes a lot to me wanting to do work like this in order to help people improve their understanding and help people recognise that my children are, good kids, and they do have some needs, social, emotional, behavioural needs that sometimes do need addressed, as well as other issues that maybe do come with a label, that maybe do have a diagnostic need to it. But we have to look at the child as a whole picture and look at their situation, their context, and think about it. And that is really difficult, because even if a child has a diagnosis with a condition, what works for them doesn't necessarily work for somebody else. You know, we wouldn't expect two people who both lose a leg in an accident to recover in the same way, to deal with the same prosthetic limb in exactly the same way. Everybody gets adjustments, everybody gets support. And maybe when that's physical, people find it easier to see and to understand. And what I hope we can do is get people to widen their understanding and their knowledge, and recognise that actually all young people probably at some point in their life will need a little bit of extra support, and that's okay. We shouldn't be embarrassed. There's no shame in needing help. You know, as a parent and as an adult, I know that I need to ask for help. And I'm not the best at it. I don't think many of us are. But, you know, I'm learning every day what needs that I have and what my family have, and how best to address that. And so I hope that professionals and parents and carers and children themselves can help to understand what their needs are and speak up about what they need. Because as a parent, you get quite used to fighting for your child's needs, and sometimes that can feel like a real struggle. And so I would hope that if people grow together in their awareness of the big picture of additional support needs, then hopefully we can be more successful in supporting every child's needs, because they need to thrive. And that is exactly why Thriving Families is here, is to be able to support parents and carers to ensure that their children are able to thrive, and that is socially, academically, and within their own family, because that's their right. We all have a right to have the best opportunity we can whilst we live in this amazing country. So thanks for coming for a walk with me. I'm going to go back to the car now, and I'm very wet and soggy, but thanks for keeping with me through the rain and all the interesting weather, and hopefully I'll take you on a walk again soon.